EPA, expected points added, is a stat that calculates the value of a play relative to the likelihood of scoring. For example, if you were to gain 3 yards on 3rd and 2, you'd be much more likely to end up scoring on a drive compared to gaining 3 yards in 3rd and 10. Essentially, this stat lets you know how valuable each play is. There were only 2 teams in the entire league this season that had a higher EPA per play while running the football rather than passing it, and those 2 teams combined for 8 wins on the season. I put together a chart comparing the EPA per play on runs and passes for every team in the NFL this season. On the y-axis is passing EPA, and on the x-axis is rushing EPA. The better a team's pass offense was, the higher up. The better a team's rush offense is, the farther right. So ideally, you'd want to be on the top right. The Ravens were head and shoulder above every other team in the league this season. But notice how there were only 5 teams in the entire NFL this season that didn't have a negative EPA per play on rushing plays. And of every team in the league, only the Panthers and Browns had a higher EPA per play on rushes compared to passes. And those 2 teams were in the bottom of offenses in 2024. So if 27 NFL teams had negative EPA per play when running the ball, is it really worth it to run the football, and why do teams do it? Well, first off, let's go over why teams even run the ball in the first place. There are a couple of reasons. Running the ball helps keep the offense on schedule with both controlling the clock and setting yourself up better for the next play. It's also much more safe than passing the ball, and of course, it sets up the play action pass. Controlling the clock might actually be the most underrated thing an offense can do in football. There were only 2 teams in the league this year that were top 10 in average time of possession per game that didn't make the playoffs, and only 2 teams in the bottom 10 that did. And the top 3 teams in average time of possession were all top 5 offenses this year. And each of those 3 teams were top 12 in the NFL in rushing percentage. So clearly, the teams that consistently stick with the run tend to hold the ball longer, which directly translates into having a better offense. Keeping on schedule is very important too. The Eagles and the Ravens were the 2 most efficient / valuable offenses in the league this season, and on first down they had the highest rushing rate in the entire NFL. When a team is able to get a successful rush on first down, it significantly improves the success of a drive. This is a major reason why there were 2 of the 5 teams that weren't negative in EPA on rushes. And if you aren't able to run the football, teams will not fall for play action passes, which has proven to be one of the most effective passing plays in the modern league. Jalen Hurts and Justin Herbert both benefited from having great rushing attacks, and their play action passing stats proved how much defenses really respected their rushing attacks. A good running game means teams need to have more defenders in the box. This leads to Jalen Hurts and Justin Herbert increasing their yards per attempt on play action passes by 35 and 33% respectively, whereas teams with bad rushing attacks like the Dallas Cowboys end up in the position where Dak Prescott's yards per attempt on play action passes was less than his normal passes. For good reason, nobody respected the Cowboys' run game last year. Good thing Jerry Jones didn't want to sign Derrick Henry. But despite how important the stats show that it is to run the ball, only 3 teams in the NFL ran the ball more than they passed it. Yet, those were 3 of the best offenses in the league. So how do teams like the Chiefs, Rams, and Dolphins continue to have elite offenses without running the ball a ton? Well, in the current NFL, teams have been using the shorter pass game as an extension of the run. In Mahomes and Josh Allen's earlier seasons, they were known for their explosive big play offenses. This year, Mahomes was ranked 35th in the NFL in yards per attempt, only throwing the ball 6.8 yards each try. The new Andy Reid offense is get the ball into the hands of your playmakers quickly and let them do the rest. And this is shown to work very well considering they've been to 3 straight Super Bowls and won 2 of them. But why did they shift away from explosive plays in the first place? Does anyone remember in the 2020 regular season when Tyreek Hill caught 7 passes for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns in the first quarter alone against the Bucs? This game nearly single-handedly changed the way teams play both offense and defense, maybe forever. Tyreek was able to torch the defense because the Buccaneers only played 2 high safety on 29% of snaps in that first quarter. And at the time, this was not uncommon at all. The league average in the NFL that season for 2 high safeties was actually exactly 29%. But in the current league, it's nearly impossible to stop an offense with 1 safety consistently when you have a quarterback who's as gifted as a passer as Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, especially when they have a weapon to throw to like Tyreek Hill in 2020 or currently Xavier Worthy. But the Buccaneers, luckily, would figure out how to mitigate this explosive offense in their Super Bowl rematch versus the Chiefs. Todd Bowles put together nothing short of a defensive masterclass against Andy Reid and the Chiefs. His blueprint to doing so was not blitzing, and he ran a career-high 87% of snaps with 2 high safeties. What the Bucs did to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl is still having a lasting effect in today's game. Since 2020, every single season has had a higher percentage of defenses running 2 high safeties. Teams have been running this style of defense at an average increase of nearly 2% each season, with 2024 being over 34% of defensive snaps with 2 safeties. This is the reason why we're seeing such a big shift away from the explosive passing offenses. The new version of explosive plays is seemingly through the ground game. As I said earlier, the Chiefs and the Dolphins are 2 of the most pass-heavy offenses in the NFL, and weirdly enough, they had 2 of the least amount of explosive plays in the entire league, whereas the Ravens, Niners, Eagles, Lions, and Bucks are all elite rushing attacks, and they led the league in explosive plays. We are seeing one of the biggest shifts in play styles that I have ever seen. Patrick Mahomes dominated the league so much in his early seasons that teams are seemingly okay with getting dominated on the ground if that means they're not going to give up big passing plays. But this goes deeper than just changing the way teams run their offense and defense. This shift in play style is going to affect the way that teams build their entire rosters. Saquon Barkley just signed a 2-year, $41 million contract with over $35 million in guaranteed money. Just a couple of seasons ago, this would have been called one of the worst contracts in the sport. Between 2009 to 2020, there were only 2 running backs on the Super Bowl winning team that even made more than $5 million annually. But now, here we are. Saquon just won the Super Bowl, and the early odds for the 25-26 season have the top 5 teams all having their running backs making well over $5 million annually, aside from James Cook. However, James Cook is seeking a new contract right now, and after a season where he was top 3 in rushing touchdowns, and with the current landscape of the NFL, the Bills would be absolutely ridiculous to not pay the man. The 49ers were really the first team to start this trend in team building composition by having an elite run scheme and rushing attack, and then trading for an elite running back. The Eagles and Ravens both followed, and the results have spoken volumes. But having an elite running back by itself really doesn't correlate to winning games at all. Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry on their former teams didn't really do much in 2023, and that's because they had poor supporting casts along with bad run schemes. Take Breece Hall in 2024 for example. The Jets' offensive line and coaching was nothing short of embarrassing this year, which is causing one of the most talented rushers in the NFL right now to put up stats that don't even make him look like a top 10 guy. But if you were to throw Breece Hall on a team with a good run game and competent coaching, I guarantee you he would put up top 5 caliber rushing stats. It's going to be very interesting to see how teams approach this upcoming draft. Obviously, this year's draft class has a very strong running back group. At the front of the pack, you've got Ashton Jeanty, who is a generational prospect at the position. If he falls into a team's hands who has a good run game, the league could be in serious trouble, but it's unfortunately pretty likely for a team who doesn't have a great rushing game to draft him pretty high due to his talent. The Dallas Cowboys are a team who has a lot of buzz revolving around Jeanty. This wouldn't be the worst case scenario. However, if he were to fall into the hands of a team like the Broncos or the Chargers, they could easily turn into one of the deadliest offenses in the league. Do you guys think the NFL will ever revert back to the old days of the explosive passing offenses? Or did the 2020 Kansas City Chiefs air raid change the landscape of the NFL's game plans forever?